Assalamu alaikum warahmatullah. Oral communication exam number 4. This is one of the easiest exams I have come across, so you should be able to answer all these questions without much trouble. Okay, so we will start with questions as usual. There are 6, I guess. Number 1. Define the term communication. So you have to give the definition of the word communication. Number 2. Why do people communicate in everyday life? So what's the reason, what's the purpose and the objective of communication in our daily life? Number 3. Define verbal and non-verbal forms of communication. So by telling the definition of each one, you state the difference. Display the difference between hearing and listening. So what's the difference between hearing and listening? Number 5. What is meant by noise in communication? And in one of my lessons we have seen noise in communication and types of noise. So now you just have to give the definition of noise in communication. Number 6. Mention 7 basic elements of communication process and define them. You have to mention them, then you give the definition of each element. Okay, now I will move immediately to the answers. Try to answer the questions before checking up with me. Okay, define the term communication. Communication can simply be defined as the transferring or exchanging of ideas and information from one person or group known as sender to another person or group of people known as receiver through a channel of communication. This is the easiest definition again. Number 2. Why do people communicate in everyday life? So what's the objective behind communication? Communication is used in our daily life for a variety of reasons. People communicate to share information and exchange ideas, to build social relationships, and to express their wants and needs. You can add more if you like or less, it depends. Number 3. Define verbal and non-verbal forms of communication. Verbal communication is the words we speak and sounds that come out of our mouths when we are speaking, like tone of voice and sighs. What do we mean by sighs? Like this. This is a sigh. The message in verbal communication is transmitted via spoken words. Okay? Spoken words, since it is verbal, not non-verbal. Non-verbal communication refers to any communication that happens between two or more people using facial expressions, hand movements, body language, postures, and gestures. Number 4. Display or show the difference between hearing and listening. Hearing and listening are two different things. When we hear a sound, we perceive it by our ears without prior intention of hearing it. Okay, so we don't have the intention, النية, of hearing this sound. It just comes to us, okay, comes to our ears. Whereas listening is done intentionally and requires careful attention or focus to understand meaning behind the words. Number 5. What is meant by noise in communication? And I told you before there is a lesson on noise in communication and its types. So in general, noise in communication can be external or internal, and it means anything that affects and interrupts the process of effective communication between a speaker and listener, or between a sender and receiver. The last question. Mention 7 basic elements of communication process and define them. The 7 basic elements of communication process are as follow. We have sender, ideas, encoding, communication channel, receiver, decoding, and feedback. So we start now with definition. Sender What do we mean by a sender? It's the person who conveys or sends the message to the receiver. Ideas. Sometimes you can find ideas in the way of message. This is the subject or the message of the communication. Communication channel. A communication channel is the medium or method or mean through which a message is sent to the receiver. Receiver. Receiver is the person who receives the message to whom it is sent. Decoding. Decoding, it is how an audience or a receiver or a listener understands and interprets the message. The last one, it is feedback. Feedback is the response from the receiver through which a sender can have an idea about whether the message is well received or it needs more explanation. If, for example, I'm having a presentation in public speaking class, I express myself and talk to you about my subject. When I ask you about what do you understand, you will give me your feedback. And through this feedback, or I will ask you some questions, and through the answers of these questions, I can understand if you have understood my topic clearly or not. And this, knowing whether you understand my topic or not, is called feedback. That's all. Wish you the best of luck.